Welcome, everybody. Good morning here in Jerusalem. My name is Karen A., and I'm your host for the Afro-Euro Reco12 podcast. Although, of course, we welcome people from all around the globe, whatever time zone you're in. Reco12 is a family of recovery resources for people who are working the 12 steps for all addictions, all afflictions. I came into the rooms through OA and work the 12 steps of the big book through multiple fellowships. Wherever you're coming from, whatever you're suffering from, we hope you'll find some recovery here. If you would like to check out other speaker shares that have been recorded, you could go to reco12.com. And if you'd like to participate and give a seventh tradition and donate to the Reco12 family of recovery resources, that's reco12.com/support. If you are bursting with a desire to share your experience, strength of hope, your recovery, your peace, your sanity, your happiness, your joy, or anything else you got that we want, you can record yourself and share on the little speak pipe widget on the website and send that over to us, or you could reach out to me personally or to Justin. I will put my number in the chat. Similarly, if you are looking for a sponsor or for sponsees, you can reach out to us about that too. Without further ado, it is my honor to bring to you Ben K., who is here in Israel, not so far away from me geographically, and a brother in recovery. Ben will introduce himself, share about his recovery journey, about the fellowships he's in. And I'm really excited because he's going to share a lot about DA, Debtors Anonymous. We've never had a DA fellow on this podcast in this time zone before. And he's going to do that for about 20 minutes. While Ben is speaking, if you have a question or an inquiry or are inspired or want to hear more about something, I'm going to ask you to jot that down or put it in the Q&A box in the chat. At the end of his share, Ben K. will hopefully address your questions. Thank you so much and welcome. Ben, great to have you.
Thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate it. I love this podcast and listened to you a few times. I'm Ben. I'm a debtor. I'm grateful to be here. And I guess I'll start with what it was like. DA is interesting because usually most people in DA come from other fellowships because this obsession with money is hard to spot. Everyone thinks about money or struggles with money. So I find that a lot of the people that join DA already have experience in other fellowships. Same is true for me. But what it was like, I never had any clarity about money. I was never taught about money, and my parents always said, we're broke, or we can't afford that, or whatever. And I was just always embarrassed. I don't know if it's not their fault, but I was embarrassed of having money, of not having money. I was embarrassed to ask for money. I was embarrassed to ask for my needs. Ashamed is more like it. And lived with all these defects of character. And a few funny stories. When I was married with 2 kids, I would get bills in the mail. And I would get the bills. I wouldn't be able to open them. I would just stick them in a plastic bag and throw them across the room. And think to myself, how dare they send me bills? I will pay for the internet when I get to it. And that was kind of my attitude. That was kind of the insanity that I was living in. Fast forward, moved to Israel. I could never use a credit card safely. I would get a credit card and I would just max it out. I never knew how much money we had for groceries. My wife would say, so Ben, how much money do we have for groceries? I don't know. No clue. I could look at the bank. It was very difficult for me to go and log in and look at the bank account and everything. And even if I did, I had no idea what we would also have to pay for besides for the groceries. So it was just insane. It was a life like just ruled by fear constantly. And one day, and I came from a different fellowship, and one day I was sitting there and I joined a meeting with an old timer, and I asked him about this obsession with money, and he suggested I should check out a money program. So I started DA. I think it was about 6 years ago, and because I was doing the steps, I read the big book, I was doing the steps on my other program, and every night I would sit there obsessing about money, obsessing about spending, about under earning, overworking, all these different things. And so in DA, there's really two types of people. There are the people that overspend. They can't stop themselves from spending. Whatever the compulsion drives them to spend money. To go to a store, they can't say no. They have to spend the money. Sometimes they don't even use the things that they buy. They're constantly in debt. And then there's on the other side of the spectrum, there are the people that obsess about scarcity. They obsess about how little can I spend. And that was me. I was living in scarcity. Both groups, the obsession is still an obsession. It doesn't really matter. They're not very different. But some people don't connect to the message of the overspending because they say, hey, I don't spend any money recklessly. And some people, the opposite, they say, I don't connect to this whole, some people could be making six figures and still need to be in DA because their life's unmanageable. They have this obsession. And so there's a lot of different symptoms. Debting is just one symptom. You don't have to be in debt to be in DA necessarily. Although, there's another fellowship called Under Earners Anonymous, where a lot of the people go that don't have debt. But there's plenty of other symptoms. The defects are all the same. We're all living in the same defects as everyone else. The obsession takes a little different form. Some people are under earning. Some people are overworking. The fear in the workplace is something that I find pretty universal, that we're all really afraid and unable to communicate properly at work. I was ashamed to ask for raises. I didn't know how to communicate with landlords. None of that. So I joined DA. I had 27 people and companies that I owed money to, even though I wasn't using credit cards anymore. I had to call my mom at midnight her time to bail me out to pay for my electric bill. That was a fun time. I had to go to the electricity company's offices and be there to pay the bill so they won't shut off my electricity. And granted, I had a job, my wife had a job. And I was living in resentment. I was resenting every single company and service provider I've ever worked with, everybody. If they only knew. And so what I was told is the main problem in DA is vagueness. So how in AA or NA talk about sobriety. So in DA, we talk about vagueness. That's the biggest problem. And our solution is clarity. Spending isn't evil, right? Just like, in a food program, you're not going to say eating is evil. It's neutral. So spending is neutral. And our goal is not to squeeze ourselves into some kind of budget, into some kind of diet, because it doesn't work. So our goal is to first get clarity of what we're spending. And that's probably the hardest part. I had so much resistance to write down my numbers, to get clarity. I was so afraid, ashamed of what I was doing with money. And it wasn't anything dramatic. I wasn't flying to Vegas. That's GA. That's a different fellowship. But it was just this overwhelming feeling of shame. So the first thing I did was start writing down my numbers. For 3 months, they told me, before I can sponsor you, my sponsor told me, you're going to write down all your spending and you're going to summarize it in a spreadsheet. And that was probably the hardest thing ever. And then after 3 months, we did a thing called the PRG, which is a pressure relief group, where essentially it's usually a man and a woman that have recovery, and they meet with the newcomer, me, and we go over the numbers. When I came to this meeting, I literally felt like I wanted to throw up. I was so afraid. And it was okay. They just looked at the numbers. And the reason it's so hard, I think, is the ego is so tied to money. Money is such a, you know, such an essential thing to my life. I'm afraid to share it with others. I'm afraid to, what are they going to say? They're going to say, don't buy this, don't do this. Well, so the clarity was a big piece. The spending plan is a huge piece. And we don't call it a budget. We call it a spending plan on purpose because we're planning our spending. We're not planning to fast and not get groceries all month. We're just planning our spending. And for me, because I'm in scarcity, they had to teach me how to do self-care. They had to say, no, Ben, you have to have a category for uh, going to the dry cleaners. You have to have money left over for getting a haircut. You know, your glasses may need repair, things like that. Another thing was that we started off and I created an ideal spending plan. I was able to just give yourself the freedom to write down everything. Ideally, if money wasn't an issue, what would you want to be in your spending plan? And that kind of gives me the freedom to say, here's all the things I would want. And then God is in the numbers. When I meet with these people, usually we meet once a month with these two people, a guy and a lady with a lot of recovery. They have like 20 years in DA. And when I write down my spending and when I do my spending plan, I go over it every week or so. The God is in the numbers. I give the numbers to God, to my higher power. And it stops being about me and my ego and my selfishness and fear and shame and all the crap. It becomes about God. Here are the numbers that God gave me. I didn't, it's not my money, God's money. How would God want me to do this? And every month there's miracles. Every month where I go over some category, then some other thing comes from a different category, and it always balances out as long as I do the action. Do the action of writing down the numbers. I write it in a WhatsApp group with my wife, and then once a week or so I go in and I transfer it over to a sheet. And it's become very, very simple, like second nature, like doing daily inventories. And then I was also taught, because I have an obsession to repay debt, right? My self-worth is all tied with the amount of debt I owe and all this stuff. So I was taught that no, your family's needs come first, debt comes last. You have family's needs and even some, extra spending, and then debt is at the end, very, very end. And I was taught how to speak to my creditors. Of course, I had like credit card companies, collection companies calling. They all want their money and they want all it now. And I had to make minimum payments. It took me a year before I started repaying debt. And I just had to do minimum payments. My sponsor used to send $1 a month, a check with $1 on it to credit card companies. And they had to take it. What are they going to do? Now he's debt free. But we start with the action. Each time I'm paying back something, even if it's $1 or a shekel or a rupee, then that's an action. That's a spiritual action. And I'm not in charge of the results, right? I just do the actions. Results happen. So fast forward, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, I've paid off all the 27 people and companies. I have one tax year to finish, which some people don't consider that debting because it's just taxes. You pay your taxes. But I have one tax year, 2019, to fix. And I'm going to be filing taxes this year. I started filing taxes. That was a miracle. I stopped doing tax evasion. I have everything I need today. Actually, this year started saving money, which is a miracle. And another spiritual action I was taught is, let's say you're saving up for a mortgage. You think to yourself, wow, how am I ever going to afford a mortgage? So you put $1 next to the mortgage category and you say to yourself, I'm putting away $1. It's a spiritual thing in a way that it gives me permission to, helps me to believe that God's going to make it happen. But some people actually take the dollar and put it in savings or take it as cash and put it in an envelope, whatever works. So what else? Spending plan is critical. Talking to creditors. And before I did anything in with my money, I would just call my sponsor. My landlord was threatening to sue me. It all seemed so overwhelming. He was like, you just, come up with the highest number you possibly can. And then maybe that will be enough and I won't sue you. So I called my sponsor freaking out and he said, well, what was the damage you caused? I said, okay, I broke the couch, which was possibly already broken when I moved in. I broke a chair and I scratched the table or something. So he said, okay, talk to your properly appointed authorities. Call people that sell chairs. Call people that sell fixed couches. And I came up with like, I don't know, whatever it was, $300. And then I made a payment plan with a guy and he never sued me. So it was that kind of thing. I don't know how to deal with people and I just call my sponsor and he walks me through it. 1 month, I didn't know how I was going to pay the rent. No clue. And I think I was between jobs. And I called my sponsor. And that day he said, well, is the rent due today? And I said, no, due in 3 weeks. So he said, well, we don't have to worry about that today, do we? It's not due today. So I was like, okay, that sounds like a wacko, but okay, I'll take it. The next day I called him freaking out. And he said, well, is it due today? I said, no, okay, don't have to worry about it. And by the end of the month, I had rent. I was able to pay the rent. Everything worked out. But it's about the same principles that apply to all the programs. If I'm living in fear, I have to ask God to remove the fear, turn my thoughts on I could help. Ask God, what's the next best action for me to do? What's his will for me? And go do that and not freak out about, my own defects, my own fears. What else? Lots of miracles. I still go to meetings, of course. I sponsor others. I help other people with their spending plans and their PRGs. And sponsoring others is probably the foundation of any program, especially DA, where I can be reminded of where I came from. And I can literally just by sharing things that happen to me, I help others, learn that it's not just them and it's totally possible. Many, many other miracles happened. I have a car today. I can afford rent. I live in a beautiful place. We have a spending plan. Oh, the last piece I want to talk about is it's unique to DA because in AA and NA, your sobriety depends on you, right? You're going to drink, you're going to lose your sobriety. You're going to smoke, you lose sobriety. In DA, you have a spouse, and that spouse is also spending money. And it's not like you're just going to cut them off from, spending money. So DA doesn't have like a DA anon program. It's more difficult for people in DA whose spouses aren't on board or aren't in DA. And that's okay. It's totally manageable. And if you come and you're new, just start with your own sobriety first. Start with your own spending plan. If your spouse is spending some of the categories or all the categories in the plan, that's fine. You just either you get the bank statement and you figure out what they are. You ask them, of course, if they're willing to be there with you and do the spending plan with you. If they're not, then just start by writing down what you spend at least. Just every month, write down what you spend. And then through your PRG and DA and sponsors, you'll find ways to get them on board. With my wife, it took a bit. It took like 3 to 6 months. But when she saw that the process works, the spending plan works, and she trusted it, and slowly we got on the same page. So it seems scary in the beginning with your spouse if they're not on board, but just focus on your own actions, do the steps, do your own spending plan, and then you can see what you can do. Either you can just take out cash and give your spouse cash for the month and say, here are the categories, or, cut out credit cards slowly, or whatever you need to do. So it's totally possible. And yeah, if I do the actions and the steps, and God takes away the obsession, and I can respond sanely to life. And the bank offers me crazy loans and credit card promotions, and I laugh at them and move on, and I don't have to be taken over by the obsession. So yeah, grateful to be here. Thanks so much for letting me share.
Wow. Wow. I definitely want what you have and hope to be in touch with you about clearing away the vagueness around spending. I get that our addict mind tells us, like, oh, it's okay. We don't have to be so uptight, so obsessive, but like our big book says, we addicts are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us. I have a question for you, Ben K. How did you get over the hump? Like, I know I've signed up for like money coaching seminars and money coaching, and that first spreadsheet is just like you said, it's so intimidating. I have a few credit cards and I have teenagers, so I let them and the different. I don't know. It seems so. And I mean, I'm good about paying my taxes, but again, also every year, all listing everything again and getting it in a spreadsheet. And gosh, I wish I were more organized. I really should have like a standing. I should really do this monthly so it's not so intimidating once a year every time. And how do you get over that initial hump that like
Well,
all that
first you start
fear?
with, it's a great question, but first you start with just writing down what you spend. So you go get some food, you buy a coffee. So write down what the coffee costs and get into that habit every day, just writing down the numbers, reminding yourself that it's just a number, it's neutral, it doesn't define you, it doesn't have to connect with your self-worth. And then sum it all up for the week in a spreadsheet. And I can share a link to a sample that I made, a template. We can put
Did
in
you
the
do
show
that by
notes.
hand? Because I even once a few times started signing up for like some money manager app, and I did it for like a week, and then I kind of forgot about it, or blew it off. Or did you find like pen and paper is easiest, and then recording it later? What stuck for
I
you?
For me, I do it on WhatsApp and then I put it on a Google Sheet.
Mm,
And then on WhatsApp, I can say, here, all the money was put into the sheet. And then I
nice.
know that's where I started off from. But yeah, some people still do pen and paper. But once it's on the sheet, then it's really easy to see, okay, here's the category, here's what I spent. It's broken down by weeks of the month. And then I would suggest if someone has a lot of credit cards at different accounts, just start with what you're spending, start with one account, sum it all up for what you wrote down. And then if the credit card bill came, so just put that, okay, credit card bill, here's the total amount for the month. You don't have
Mm.
to get super granular. And you just progress, not perfection. As you go along, you'll
Okay,
get
that
better and
that takes
better.
the edge off a little bit. I'm like, oh, I don't know, how much is this deduct, and what is the bank fee, and what is the health insurance yeah, okay. That you're saying you don't have to get it into minutia right up front. Just start kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
tracking. Still feels intimidating, I gotta say. Like, did you have that? Like the
Yeah, it was very scary. But I didn't want to live the way I was living. I was living in fear. And
yeah. Talk a little bit about. I was going to ask you. Can you talk a little bit about the fear and the unmanageability, as the big book calls it? How did this affect your emotional world? You spoke about being afraid of creditors or resentful of creditors, unable to communicate with landlords. Can you speak about the shift you've seen in your emotional world as a result of recovery through Debtors Anonymous?
sure, yeah, I just felt less than all the time. I felt like the world's taking advantage of me. Everyone's going to take advantage of me. God's taking advantage of me. It was a lot of step two work, I think,
Mm,
and a lot of fear of taking the actions. I'm a smart guy. I could figure it out, but I just couldn't take the action. I didn't have the willingness to do the actions. And it was just whenever I would, let's say I got a bill or I got a fine and I was afraid, I would just put it on a shelf and forget about it for 6 months and then I would get fees. So the action was call the company and ask them what you owe. And my sponsor said, you're just getting information. I was afraid they're going to tell me you have to pay it, and I'm going to be compelled to pay it, and then I'm going to pay it, and I won't have to have enough money for groceries that month. My sponsor always said, you're just getting information. When you get the information, you put it on paper, you put it on a sheet, and then you call me with it, and we can talk about it. We can see together if you have enough money to pay this, or ask them, is there a way to break it into a payment plan? just that action of asking was extremely scary. But once I got into it, now the pressure is off. I don't have to make any decisions. I get the information. What are the ways I can pay you? How many payments? When is it due? Write it down. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And so that took the edge off for sure. And
It's
now
funny. We're talking about spending plans. Sorry, go ahead. Finish
yeah, go
your
ahead.
thought.
Go for it.
No, finish your thought. Finish your thought. I'll go there.
I'm saying now I'm not afraid to call and get information. I still get sometimes into this mode, like I was sitting down with an insurance agent for life insurance, and he was like trying to close me. And I called my sponsor after our meeting, and he told me, go to your existing life insurance and ask them what's the comparison. And I called them and they said, oh, you're already getting this discount. And I told him about it and he got all upset. I would have known that you would have gone to this other people and asked them. I wouldn't have sat with you. And that's what I got to do. I got to be completely transparent and get the information from whoever the provider is and not be afraid letting people down or, yeah.
Wow. I'm actually like, I don't know if you can see on Zoom, but I'm actually moved to tears by what you're saying. What I'm hearing between the lines about calling your sponsor, breaking it down, asking for a payment plan is I'm hearing that you matured a lot in this program, that you learned to communicate about money. And I feel that this is like so translatable to all other fellowships. Fear and this, or I'm going to spend, or I'm not going to spend, or I'm lonely, so I'm going to use or act out. And it's like, well, how about talking? How about asking someone on a date? How about asking someone how much you could pay? How about, you know, um, eating eggs so that you're full and you don't want sugar? I feel like it translates across the board. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like you grew up here, you matured here? Because certainly sounds like there's a lot of communication in place now where there wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, for sure. I'm able to, yeah, I'm able to communicate, able to pay back things. When I get overwhelmed in my head, if there's a list of things I owe, I just write it down in my spending plan and I can just go back to it. I don't have to keep it all in my head.
Yeah, and what I'm also hearing you say is like, spending plan is like, I can do this, I can't do this. And that's so much of life, right? Like when my teenager is like home yesterday from school and he's like, okay, did you get my prescription? Can you fry me schnitzels? Can you bake a cake? It was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And the addict in me wants to be like, leave me alone, stop controlling me. It's like, wait, the pharmacies are closed. It's election day. I can ask the doctor for your prescription. I can go tomorrow. I baked you some cookies. I'm exhausted now. I'm not going to be able to do schnitzels. Maybe I'll send them with someone on Thursday, right? It's like, it's not this like all or nothing, like, life or death kind of addict reaction behavior. I'm hearing that. And that is just so, so beautiful and gives me hope for my finances and the finances of my fellows and the sanity, right? We got a really good question here from Brian D. And it's actually a question that I had as well, Ben. And that is like, you know, there is a lot of action here. Like you're doing work, you're accountable. Like you made no, bones about that. How do you said you're in other fellowships. How do you manage the work or the homework you have in other fellowships? Is it just all converge into one beautiful spiritual thing? Or how do you juggle all that work? Like our questioner here said, if someone's overwhelmed in one program, it's like, barely got my sanity with codependency. Now you want me to like keep a list of every coffee I bought, heaven help me, right? Can you talk about that? Your multiple fellowships?
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, this was necessity. It was just so overwhelming. I don't want to live in fear anymore. I don't want to live in vagueness. And I wanted to have clarity what I have. So for me, it came down to the biggest hump was just writing down what I spent. So now it's just second nature. I go somewhere, I get a receipt, I write down that number in a WhatsApp group. just make a WhatsApp group. You can even do it with yourself in it, and get into the habit of writing down the things you spend, whatever they are. And that doesn't take much time, especially when it becomes second nature and isn't scary anymore. That really doesn't take a lot of time. And I find that anybody with bazillion programs can write down what they spend. And then once a week, half an hour, sum it all up in a spending plan. The more you work with a spending plan, the easier it'll get. It's really very simple. Depends how techy you are. If you're really not good with computers, then I guess it'll get harder, but you can do it on paper if you want. Just writing that down once a week, that's half an hour. And then once a month, meet with two people in the program. I mean, obviously, I'd suggest going to DA meetings, but I've seen people recover by doing these actions. You can keep doing steps in other programs and do the DA actions. And once a month, you meet with a PRG group, pressure relief group, and you review your spending plan for an hour. And they're not there to tell you what to spend, what not to spend. They're there to help you live in abundance. So if you're missing something, that's important. If you don't have savings, or if you're getting behind on bills, they can suggest actions that you could take. And then you have a list of actions. Whenever you have a fear about those actions, you just call somebody. I used to make a call before calling the landlord and after calling the landlord. I would call, talk to my sponsor. So just getting into those habits, realizing that's just another area of my life that I have to surrender to God. That I'm still trying to control it. It's making my life unmanageable. I have to surrender to God, just like other areas of my life. And ask God for the willingness. Comes down to that.
Sounds like you had a really kind and dedicated sponsor. Yeah. Can you talk about sponsorship in DA and how you work with others, the kind of sponsorship
Yeah.
you got?
Yeah, sponsorship in DA is huge because you're also talking about all these life issues. You're not just dealing with, the steps like in other programs. You just deal with the steps. But here there's a lot more skills. If somebody is moving or buying a house, or dealing with landlords, or going to school in a solvent way. So there's a lot you walk your sponsees through, but only if you have experience in that thing. If you don't have experience in that, my sponsor says, hey, this thing, I don't have experience. Call somebody with experience in that. But just, it's huge. Just having somebody that has been there, and in DA, the definition of solvency is you can take, what is solvency? Solvency is you're allowed to take loans that are secured. You're allowed to have a mortgage, right? Secure loan means a loan with a collateral. So if I take a mortgage from the bank, the collateral is the house. They take the house if I don't pay. So that's totally allowed. And debting is just taking out unsecured debt, unsecured loans, like credit cards or like a regular loan. So it's a lot about, I just called my sponsor all the time. Yeah. Sometimes the work is all about the steps, and sometimes the work is not, is the actions. We have a list of actions. So the spending plan, meetings, writing down our spending. And so it depends on who your sponsee is. Sometimes the sponsee needs the steps, or sometimes they're in a different fellowship, they're doing the steps there already. And here, we're doing the actions. And step 4 is really the spending plan, writing down, making an business accounting of all I'm doing with my money. And then step 9 is calling creditors and making payment plans with them and paying off the debt. It's step 9. So there's a lot of steps in the actions. It's all connected. And step 10 is writing down your numbers every day, right? Making a daily spot check inventory and just writing down, getting clarity every day. And I've made plenty of mistakes. It's not like you have to be perfect and you have to stick to it, because it's not a diet. So if I overspend on groceries by a certain amount, then I can talk to my wife and say, hey, which other categories we can take away from or decrease, and it's just about communicating. It stops being about blame and shame and more about communicating. Okay, so I did this. How do we do this? And I've never had a situation since starting this work that I've fallen into debt again or whatever. Sometimes, yeah, like there's overdraft fees. According to some people, that's debting, or some people it's not. But there hasn't been a like fall back into obsession where I'm going out and debting and spending and all that. Yeah, so it's all about the work.
Amazing. Aura asked here about the pressure relief group. Is that what it's called? PRG. What do you need? And like, is that only once you've written down everything for 3 months? Like what exactly is the PRG, and why is that necessary? And why is it called that? I guess is probably my other question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So really in DA, and I can read you the exact thing that says here in the PRG, in the program literature. After we have gained some familiarity with the DA program, we organize pressure relief groups consisting of ourselves and 2 other recovering debtors who have not incurred unsecured debt for at least 90 days, and who usually have more experience in the program. And this group, usually a man and a woman, meets in a series of pressure relief meetings to review our financial situation. And these meetings typically result in the formulation of a spending plan and an action plan. So a lot of times in DA, besides for going over the numbers, so when I'm going over the numbers, it's best to have a male perspective and a female perspective, because sometimes there's spending for kids that I'm not even thinking about. And the woman in the PRG group may say, "Oh, you forgot that winter's coming up. You need to buy clothes, whatever it is." So it's really helpful to have both perspectives.
Teens need to get their eyebrows done or whatever, right? Like dad might not think of that, right?
No, I don't think about eyebrows at all. But yeah, they're almost teens. I guess eyebrows are coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up. Just wait.
Yeah.
Eyebrows and laser and the gym and shopping and the in stuff. I'm gonna add a column there.
The PRG is looking at the spending plan because I don't want to be in isolation. I don't want to be just writing down stuff and deciding on my own. I need my sponsor, but I also need that third person with their experience, and then also bringing my pressures. DA feels like a lot of pressure inside, right? I owe this money. I'm gonna have to pay this thing, and I don't know how to do this. Feels like a lot of pressure, and I just give them a list of all my pressures, and they share on their experience what I should do, and I create an action plan. Here are all the tasks I need to do, the information I need to get, the phone calls I need to make, figure out what to do with these pressures, and it really takes the pressure off. It totally relieves the pressure. That's what's called pressure relief meetings. A lot of times it's a bigger issue that's just bigger than the spending plan. Maybe I owe taxes, or maybe there's a project, or maybe whatever. Maybe it's buying a house. There's a bigger task, and I need those 2 people. I meet with them, and we just go over the spending plan. We also go over the pressures. What do you need to go to get your PRG? Sometimes depends on your sponsor. Usually people say 1 month of spending and just summarizing that spending plan. Some people say 3 months. Just depends on your sponsor. So I would suggest going to a meeting, finding a sponsor, and then asking them. Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. I'm going to ask you to put your contact info in the chat so people can reach out to you. And then also for my reference after this call, if you could send me, Zoom links, or if you have some information on different DA meetings. We have one more question here, and then we're going to wrap up soon. If someone is asking here, if the main issue is fear, vagueness, dishonesty, and distance with spouse and overspending, not debting, would that be DA or UA or something else altogether?
And overspending, not debting. So it depends. I personally haven't been to UA, so I can't say. I've I've spoken to people in UA. They have very, very helpful tools. The wonderful program. I think the main difference is the DA focuses more on money, and UA has a lot of the same tools, but also talks about like time debting, under earning, overworking. A lot of it is like emotional things, which are also important. I would suggest just trying both of them, but it depends on your actions. What is your um, compulsion making you do? What are you doing? Are you overspending? Are you in fear all the time about the money? Or are you feeling like just less than and obsessing about that? And the actions with a spending plan are the same with both. So I would suggest trying both of them out.
I'm going to throw in an answer on this one for a little bit of potpourri here. I'm going to recommend to our listeners, if you're vague about money, you're overspending, hiding things from your spouse, I certainly recommend you reach out to Ben and DRUA. But if you're already in a 12-step program, one of the promises in our big book is that financial insecurity disappears. I promise you that if you're working a real 12-step program that includes a 12-step, meaning working with others, meaning not just you go to meetings, not just you have other fellows to either do a step 10 with, or if you're really honest, whine about your problems with. If you're really working a 12-step daily, asking yourself, how can I be useful? How can I be of service to others? How can I take other drowning men through this program, men and women? Did I do my nightly inventory, which, I did mine by heart yesterday. I didn't really write it out. I'm just thinking about my own places where I'm sloppy. So if I'm really doing my full 12 steps, which includes 10, 11, and 12 meditation. I did nightly review. I did like room for improvement, working with others. I just took a sponsee up to step 7 yesterday. I'm on this meeting. Again, I don't mean to speak specifically about myself. I'm just sharing my own checklist. It's no coincidence that yesterday when I was in the mall with my 2 girls, the biggest mall here in Jerusalem, and all these stores, I didn't buy anything. I mean, except for one thing, I used a gift certificate and I had to add about $12. I went there because I had this gift certificate, and I'm like an overspender and overshopper. And that for me is a flashing red light that I'm spiritually unfit and that I'm feeling unworthy, that I'm in self-pity, that I'm in fear, that I'm trying to get a hit of something, And what I would venture to say to our listeners is that if you re-pick up your 10, 11th, and 12th step, or if you're working with someone and you're stuck in step 4 and you get through your step 4 and give over your step 5, that probably will fall by the wayside. There may be more intense work to do, like Ben K is sharing, but for your initial relief from financial insecurity, vagueness, hiding financial information from your spouse, it's just good old dishonesty, right? Evading your taxes is good old dishonesty, right?
Yeah.
I was told by people at the time, it was my properly appointed authority, to not report what was made in the US. And I was not sleeping at night over this for a long time. And then the law changed in this country. And I decided I couldn't, for me, it was a big sum of money. Like I could have bought maybe another apartment with it. And in working my program, it became a felony in this country. And I went to the properly appointed authority and I said, I want to pay this back. And people thought I was really nuts, really, really nuts to do this. And I said, my sanity, sleeping at night is more important to me than $200,000, I mean, but that's just me, you all could decide what level you're at, but this dishonesty, if you really believe what it says in our big book, it will kill us or make us insane. Not sleeping at night is a good form of insanity, and it will make you pretty grumpy as well.
I had the same thing happen.
Yes, tell me.
That I had a job with an American company in Israel. I didn't file any taxes. Nobody knew I was making money there. And then I went to an accountant, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't like the government, so I just underreport it all, and it'll be fine." And I didn't
Totally.
realize to what extent he did that. And then the next year I came to a different account and I said, okay, we got to fix what the last guy did. And they asked me in the office, must have asked me 4 or 5 times, are you sure you want to do this? You giving the money away? And yeah, it was rigorous honesty. I asked my rabbi. I asked the rabbi's rabbi. And they all said, yeah, rigorous honesty. And that's the right thing to do.
It's funny you say that too, because I had many accountants and also many religious authorities telling me you don't need to. And it used to be more of a gray area in this country. It now became a felony. Ben and I are in the same country. But when I asked the biggest rabbi, Rav Gershon Edelstein of blessed memory, he actually said, we don't mess around with the tax authorities. Also, as you know, Ben and I happen to be Jewish, Orthodox Jews. But for anybody who is a spearhead in this program, whatever religion you are, you know, if we believe, like the big book says, that we're spearheads of God's everlasting creation, that means that I have to sanctify God's name. Now, if you don't believe in God, let's rephrase that for you. If you're a spearhead, you're a role model to other addicts. You can't, you know, act like a scumbag, to put it, you know, mildly. You know, you can't like be sharing on meetings and doing stuff and be all crooked. So, you know, in our religion, we call that sanctifying God's name. But if you're a spearhead, you know, you want to be leading by example. And that's really cool. I'm glad to know, Ben, that I'm not the only fool who did that.
Yeah.
And I
God's gonna provide.
I sleep like a baby. What?
Is God everything or is he nothing? God's gonna provide. And I enjoy paying taxes because I know my money goes to the roads, the schools, to the healthcare. It's wonderful. I'm contributing. It's like service.
Oh my gosh.
And it's my sponsor told me, I said, look, I have this amount of money, whatever it was. I'm gonna say $10,000 for the year. It's or $5,000. And he said, you know, that's the government's money in your pocket. You're holding someone else's money in your pocket, not you giving your money away. You just give them back their money. That was huge.
Well, and that is just heaven. That is just next level. Like my personal trainer says, she's young. I'm going to use it. I'm trying to be cool, you know. That is just heaven, as Leva, the personal trainer, says, because God is everything or God is nothing. My money, and we're gonna end here, Ben. I'll let you say something about that and then pray us out. My money isn't mine to begin with. It's God's money. It's God's bounty, as are my children, his children. I'm just here to take care of them. He just puts them in my pocket in my bank account so I could do good stuff with it, raise my kids, marry them off, whatever, you know, pave the roads, like Ben said. So share with us one final thought on that and then pray us out, Ben. God is everything or God is nothing. Talk to us.
I feel like it's universal applies to any program that we find once we do the steps, we find that none of the external circumstances fill me up. Nothing on the outside can fill up my God-sized hole. It's the same in DA. You know, I had my ideal spending plan. And again, I had no idea how much things actually cost. I put 2 different houses and a yacht. Now I'll just rent out the yacht. You know, I'm not going to own the yacht. Just rent out a little yacht. And I put all this money and I added it up. And it was a big, huge sum of money that I was like, I'm never going to make this. This is insane. And today, I make about that amount. I don't have any yachts or houses, but it's my ego is not tied to the amount of money anymore. And I know that I've learned that the only thing I need to be serene is connection with my higher power. And it's not the amount of money. It's not anything external. It's not the latest phone, the latest computer, the coolest job title, vacations, that everything is about connection with my higher power. When I have that and I grow that relationship, when I don't, then I fall back and start acting out. When I grow that relationship, then I can get serenity. And then I can be happy with whatever happens. I can let go of the external things that I don't even own anyway and be of service.
Wow.
That's the paradox. Very hard. Some days are hard. Some days are easier.
Wow.
But that's the goal.
Wow. I'm going to add one more thing in there. Ben mentioned a lot of things, externalities, drugs, money. For all you with people addictions, codependencies, sex and love addiction, validation addiction, workaholism, all these like amorphous addictions, I'm going to throw that up in there too. Cause like I used to like attach myself to VIPs, whether in the workplace or whether it's, being defined by a romantic partner or a husband who's got it all, which I don't have right now and which you may not have right now, or whether it's, religious circles, really important people with really great pedigree. So I'm just going to throw that up in there is that, yeah, our relationship with a higher power is more important than that too. The spouse, the perfect guy, the perfect gal, the perfect, clique, the perfect, VIP list. There is a solution, people, whatever your addiction, whatever your affliction, there is hope. Reach out to Ben. He put his number in the chat. You could reach out to me and I could put you in touch with him, whatever works. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Will you pray us out? God is everything.
Let's do the 7-step prayer. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Pray thee now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen.
Amen. Wow. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Thank you, everybody.
Jackpot.
Appreciate it.
The spiritual jackpot is right here.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of light, feet still on the ground. I can still be found, standing still.
My wings are torn and tattered, but I know I still can fly.